Coming to you live from Champion Studio in beautiful Charleston, South Carolina. It's Better Than Ever Live. Wherever you're watching, wherever you're listening, hope you're making today your masterpiece. My name is Dr. David Geier, orthopedic surgeon, sports medicine specialist, and media medical expert. I help you feel and perform your best regardless of age, injury, or medical condition. Glad to be back in Charleston. Those of you that watched Tuesday, I did the show from Charlotte. I have an office where I see patients both here out in the suburb outside of Charleston and then in Charlotte, North Carolina. And that was actually my first time up there, but I also had to do the show up there with my laptop and mobile webcam and podcast mic, and it was quite the ordeal. But I watched a little bit of the video playback, and it looks like it went okay. Thank you to all of you that joined. I appreciate whether you join later, either by watching the audio or listening to the audio podcast version on the way to the gym or at the gym or on the way to work, or you watch it on YouTube or Facebook or LinkedIn after the fact. I appreciate you. Those of you that can join us at noon Eastern time every day and leave comments and ask questions, I greatly appreciate that. As always, everything we talk about here, and we have a lot of stuff to get to, very, very thick. Lots of studies today. I think there's 14 or 15. A lot of stuff today, a lot of good information. None of this is medical advice. This is meant for general information and educational purposes only. If you have specific questions, please talk to your doctor. Also, if you want to leave a comment, I'd love to hear your name and where you are in addition to the comment. Try to keep them short so they can fit on the screen for everybody to see them. And we'll get started. Last time we spent a lot of time talking about sleep and napping and light and mental performance and that kind of thing. Today we're going to talk a lot about food and specific foods and specific things that are good and specific foods that are bad. Speaking of bad, and I talked about this on TV recently, new study that came out that was done in the San Antonio, Texas area that looked at, they took food samples from 6 different fast food chains: McDonald's, Burger King, Pizza Hut, Domino's, Taco Bell, and Chipotle. And in each of the samples at each of those 6 restaurants, they found phthalates, which are chemicals, they're industrial chemicals used to make soft plastics. They're used in things like rubber gloves. They're used in some of the containers that we make. The problem with that, as gross as that sounds, that there's plastic in our food or chemicals involved in plastics, they've been linked to a number of health problems. Issues with the endocrine system, basically your hormones, reproductive problems, fertility, and then behavioral issues in kids, learning, attention issues in kids. So not particularly good. Now, there's no legal limit, no threshold that the FDA set for phthalates, quite honestly, but they've been banned in a number of toys and other kind of products. The problem with fast food, and it's not really, I bring it up not to single out these 6 fast food restaurants or fast food chains, it's that all processed food that we're probably getting that way, it's coming in contact through the factories and conveyor belts, and then people touch it with rubber gloves, and it's put in plastic packages, is just likely to be exposed to phthalates. So just think about that going forward. It's why you can say good or bad, Dave Asprey, the Bulletproof coffee guy and the Bulletproof product line, but he sells an activated charcoal product, and one of the things on the website for it, he talks about take it anywhere you're eating food of unknown quantity to detoxify, get rid of some of the toxins in it. And again, I'm not promoting that by any stretch of the imagination, but this might be, I don't know if charcoal would get rid of phthalates or not. I would think it would, but that's kind of what you're getting at. The less you can eat at those types of restaurants, not just for phthalates, but all kinds of, just the health benefits of better nutritional food, the better. So, I think that's important. Speaking of the quality of food, new study out of, where are these people? I'm not 100% sure where the study was done, but it was published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition. The number one eating habit that ages you the fastest, not phthalates, but along the same lines, and that is, you guys are gonna, if you watch the show for any period of time, you probably know where I'm headed with this. Worst eating habit ever in terms of your longevity is eating processed foods. Yes, foods that come in a box, foods that come in a bag. They're convenient, but they have probably very few nutritional substances, and it's just not all that good for you. Plus a lot of harmful chemicals in it, so that it sits on shelves for years and doesn't go bad, and all that is just really not good. So this study, this is what they found. I think it's fascinating. Eating ultra-processed foods was linked in this study to shortening of telomeres. These, we talked about this before. These are the caps on the ends of your DNA that allow your cells to change and to replicate. Once those telomeres are gone, they gradually get shorter. The cell basically can't divide anymore. It gets damaged and dies. It's one of the things thought to be involved in the aging process. Telomere length is thought to be one of the best indicators or determinants or markers of longevity. Well, regularly eating ultra-processed foods caused inflammation, and we've talked about all the problems with inflammation, hormone irregularities, altered brain function, blood circulation issues, even linked to some cancers. So if you can avoid foods in boxes or bags or fast foods, that would be really good. And it gets worse. Another study, Nutrition Journal, looking at over 300,000 people. High consumption of ultra-processed foods linked to cardiovascular disease, cerebrovascular disease, strokes, hypertension, high blood pressure, metabolic syndrome, irritable bowel, asthma as a kid, postmenopausal breast cancer. We're going to talk about breast cancer later, and gestational diabetes. Also linked to mental health issues like depression. Here's the thing. Just going cold turkey and not getting frozen foods, not getting soft drinks, not getting potato chips and breakfast cereals, and again, things that come in bags, boxes, that kind of thing. That's a hard change to make. And the problem is they're really appetizing. You see it, you see a commercial for it, you want more of it. So the key is not to be exposed to it. So if at all possible, get it out of your house would be the number one change I'd make. Go through your pantries, just throw it all away. Then try to buy healthy whole foods, fruits, vegetables, meats, that kind of thing. Really, really, if I haven't said it enough, I say it now. Ultra-processed foods are really, really bad for our society. Okay, along the same lines, a study that just came out showed that high consumption of ultra-processed foods can impair your memory and be bad for learning. This study is really interesting. What they did, this was a study on rats, so I mean obviously not on humans, but it would be very hard to do a randomized control study where you put humans on either ultra processed foods or not. I wouldn't think that's ethical, but what they found is that a diet high in processed foods affected rats' memory. Here's why I bring that up. That shouldn't be really all that surprising, and it was especially true in older mice. And this was out of Ohio State, looking at brain inflammation and impaired memory function. But one supplement did seem to counteract those effects somewhat, and those were omega-3 fatty acids. There's one a specific type of omega-3, DHA, docahexanoic acid. I don't know if that's right. But it's good in reducing inflammation to prevent traumatic brain injuries, strokes, and cognitive decline. So if you're going to eat a lot of refined carbs, processed foods, and again, I'm not saying you should, we know based on this study it impairs cognitive function and increases weight gain as you get older, but DHA supplementation, basically omega-3 supplementation, might help with that. Now the problem is we don't know if this translates to humans. In theory, omega-3s have a lot of good effects for the brain in humans, but we don't know that for sure. So I wouldn't tell you for sure that a bunch of omega-3s are going to prevent dementia and Alzheimer's, but it certainly looks good. The bigger thing would be to avoid all those ultra-processed foods. I don't know. It's just one of my little pet peeves. Hey, Jay, really appreciate you being here. All right, let's pivot a little bit to skin cancer. 10,000 people, I saw this statistic, this blows my mind. About 10,000 people a day are diagnosed with skin cancer. Now, I don't know if that's all the bad ones like melanoma and then sort of the precancerous ones, or if that, I don't know, that just strikes me as a huge number. But melanoma, the really bad one, 200,000 Americans each year diagnosed with melanoma. Now, there have been studies that show if you want to try to prevent a variety of types of cancers, including skin cancer, you're going to want a diet high in fruits and vegetables that have a lot of antioxidants. So there was a study that looked at a particular type of drink. This was published in the Journal of Cancer Prevention, study out of University of Ottawa, looked at if a specific type of drink could lower your risk of skin cancer. And they knew that one of the superfoods that is thought to lower your risk of skin cancer, because it's high in polyphenols, are blueberries. So what they did is they made a juice from wild blueberries, put in a little bit of extra polyphenols, and then gave it to people. And what they found is that polyphenol-enriched blueberry juice inhibited the proliferation, I can't talk, of skin cancer cells. That's certainly a good thing, right? Especially if you live in an area with lots of sunlight like I do here in Charleston, South Carolina. Now, to be fair, I don't know exactly where you get blueberry juice, especially where you get the polyphenols to enhance that in blueberry juice. But here's the thing, there's a lot of foods that are high in polyphenols, things like peanuts and other kinds of nuts and dark chocolate and things like that. But what you can do is get organic blueberries. You can even get frozen organic blueberries. They're just as good, but if you can get fresh, great. Just put some of them in a smoothie. Put some of them maybe in your oatmeal if you eat oatmeal, but that may be very good for your risk of skin cancer. All right. One of the things that I really like food-wise, really like it, almost as much as something we'll talk about at the end, but I really like cheese. Really do. Now, I really don't eat much dairy anyway. Rarely, if ever, drink milk. Sometimes I'll put blue cheese on my salads, and that's about it. But I am known to have some blocks of cheddar cheese, or let's not say blocks, let's say slices of cheese that turn into, by the time I'm done eating it, the whole 1 pound block of cheese. It's really a bad habit. Fortunately, I haven't done that in about 6 to 8 months, so I guess I'm good there. But there's been a lot of debate, I don't know, the last 2-3 decades or so, with people saying dairy's really bad for you. And I feel like it's worth discussing. And so there was a great review article looking at, all right, so just how bad is dairy? Because if it is, we got to do something about it. 80% of men and women, adults, consume dairy on a regular basis, several times a week. And the things that people point to are typically issues along the lines of heart disease, maybe to a lesser extent diabetes. Osteoporosis, there's no real evidence that eating a lot of eating a lot of cheese, drinking a lot of milk, eating a lot of yogurt's definitely going to prevent osteoporosis, but it is thought to be involved in, with the calcium in it, to improve bone health. Whether that translates to preventing osteoporosis, we don't know, but it's certainly not harmful. But as it pertains to heart disease, again, because the food pyramid, just all of these studies, saturated fat in dairy, really, really bad. But we talked a few weeks ago that dairy may not be all that bad as far as heart disease. Well, there was that study that we talked about. Eating full-fat dairy or consuming full-fat dairy, drinking it as far as milk or cheese, does not raise your risk of heart disease or stroke, and it may actually be helpful. A study in The Lancet, people that had more than 2 servings of full-fat dairy a day, lower risk of cardiovascular disease and death than people who ate less than half a serving a day. So why that is, we don't really know, but that is certainly interesting, especially because dairy has been vilified for so long. Diabetes, same idea. The yogurt, at least, may be protective. Same thing with cheese. People that eat a third to half a cup of yogurt a day, 14% lower risk of developing type 2 diabetes. Cheese as well, very protective against type 2 diabetes. And it's thought to be the vitamin K2 that's in cheese. We talked about that in the Ask Dr. Geier video or live stream on Friday. So I'm not going to tell you go out and start drinking a ton of dairy, but I'm also going to tell you that it doesn't look like it may be all that harmful either. So there's still a lot of room to go research-wise to figure it out, but I'm not as anti-dairy as a lot of people are. If it works for you, great. Some people, it contributes to weight gain and things like that, so see what works for you. All right. So speaking of heart disease, cardiovascular disease is the #1 killer in the United States, at least for women. 1 out of every 5 deaths in women is cardiovascular disease. So we got to find a way to get that down. And a new study published in the journal Heart, Lung and Circulation. It was from Australian researchers, University of Queensland, University of Newcastle, and Monash University. As part of the Australian longitudinal study on women's health, they found that eating some carbs and consuming saturated fats doesn't increase your risk of cardiovascular disease, which is really interesting because for years, for decades, saturated fat was say, hey, if you eat a diet high in saturated fats, you're going to get heart disease. And then we've sort of come a little bit full circle and say, oh, no, carbs are really, really bad. You got to get off carbs. Well, they looked at hundreds of thousands of women, and they studied them over a long period of time. And one of the things that was recorded was what percentage of their calories, what percentage of their energy every day came from carbohydrates. The lowest group of people, it was about 37% of their energy from carbs. The highest was somewhere between 41 and 44%. And here's the thing. The higher the carb intake, the lower the risk of cardiovascular disease. But it really didn't seem to matter what amount of carbs you ate in terms of there was no really relationship between how many carbs and early death. Eating more carbs did seem to lower your risk of cardiovascular disease. But here's a bad news for all the doctors for years and years and years that have been saying saturated fat's so bad. Saturated fat did not play a role in cardiovascular disease. This is decades worth of data where these doctors, these health officials said saturated fat is bad. Now, I will probably say there's probably different kinds of saturated fats that might be good or bad. But this idea that fats are really bad, carbs good. And again, I don't know that this tells me that, oh, you should eat tons of carbs either. I think it's more complex than just proteins, carbs, fats. But kind of our old nutritional advice, maybe not so healthy. All right, I don't have it here, but earlier today, I had a cup of coffee sitting right there as I recorded a bunch of TV interviews. And I love coffee. Now, I try to limit how much coffee I drink. I used to, when I was in med school and early residency and early in my time practicing medicine, I was drinking 4, 5, 6 cups of coffee a day, sometimes way more than that, honestly. I've managed to cut that down to a cup of coffee a day, sometimes 2 cups of coffee a day. Some days I'd like to get it lower than that. I've been down to as low as 3 to 4 cups of coffee a week. So, and I think there's some good to that. My concerns with coffee are largely it's the most used drug in the world, and it's a stimulant, and your body gets tolerant of the caffeine in it very, very quickly. The caffeine's the drug, not the coffee. It's the caffeine in it, and I feel like the more you drink, the more you're going to need to drink to get the same stimulant benefit. So if you can cut that down, then you'll get the benefit with much less coffee. But there have been report after report after report that show some health benefits to coffee, including this new study that shows that coffee might be very, very good for your liver health. The largest study to date from the National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey, which is basically all this data based on all these patients and what they ate. And what they found is that if you drink more than 3 cups of coffee a day, it doesn't do so much for fatty liver, but it does seem to benefit liver stiffness, which plays a role in liver fibrosis and cirrhosis. So if you have issues with your liver, and the liver is involved in detoxification and a number of metabolic processes in your body, a healthy liver is a very good thing. So maybe drinking more than 3 cups of coffee a day is good. Another study out of the UK that coffee protected against chronic liver disease. Now this study, the one I was talking about, they didn't look at any specific type of coffee. All coffee to them was the same, whether it was Starbucks type coffee or you were making it at home, if it was instant coffee, that kind of thing. To me, that's a lot of caffeine, but again, that's at least encouraging. If you really like your caffeine and can keep it under control, have at it. I like to kind of follow caffeine and the alcohol index somewhere between 1 to 2 drinks per day, alcoholic drinks. Probably the same thing for coffee is what I'd recommend, but potentially might be very good for your liver. All right, one of the newer sort of terms, one of the newer things that has come to attention lately in the health world in terms of your overall health, your health span, your longevity, is what's called visceral fat. Now, this is not the fat that's around your abdomen that sort of jiggles, that you can pinch it. That's subcutaneous fat. Visceral fat, you can't see, you can't feel. It's around your organs. It's around your stomach. It's around your kidneys. It's around your liver. It's around your intestines. And that fat has a risk of a lot of health problems. It's been linked to heart disease, type 2 diabetes, fatty liver disease, polycystic ovary syndrome, and sleep apnea. It's been linked to breast cancer. It's been linked to gallbladder surgery. So what, if anything, can you eat to lower your risk of developing visceral fat? Well, new study out of the journal Scientific Reports, they found that a test group that was given a protein supplement every day, along with mild calorie restriction, lost more visceral fat than a group that just took a placebo. Plus, the people that took the protein supplement, it improved their gut microbiome, and that's been linked to a reduction in visceral fat regardless of diet. But that may be the way to go, and you can find out how much visceral fat you have by getting a DEXA scan. That's really the gold standard on body fat, and it'll tell you what percent is visceral fat. And I can tell you that it's higher than you would like to believe sometimes, at least in my case. But this may be the way to go. Say you cut calories, 200, 300 calories a day in everything else, and you make that up with a protein supplement. Might be very good to help get your visceral fat down. That is going to be a big one in terms of overall health, risk of cardiovascular disease, and everything else is going to be getting your visceral fat down. All right. The very first Better Than Ever Live I ever did, I think it was the first one, I showed you my bottled water from a hydrogen water maker, molecular hydrogen. It's this little thing, you plug it in with a USB cable, put the water in, you hit this little button, and it's got these little coils, and it supposedly makes hydrogen water, hydrogen rich water. And the way I do it's like 10 minutes, and it makes 2.7 million or 2.7 parts per million. No, 2.7 million. I don't remember. Lots of hydrogen, right? And it's thought to have tons and tons of benefits. And I told you how my friends saw that thing, and they think it's a complete scam. They think the company just put some LED light to make it turn colors and then made it bubble so you think it's hydrogen, and it's not really doing anything. I don't know. I actually like it a lot. The problem is that mine only makes 10 ounces at a time, and it takes 10 minutes, and then I'll turn it on and then I'll forget about it. And from a practical sense, I need a much bigger one that makes a lot more water. But the reason I bring it up, new study, now granted this is a study in aging mice, but looked at how it looked at molecular hydrogen and its effect on oxidative stress. And we've talked about when there's damage in your body, when there's toxins, when things like smoking and alcohol, it causes oxidative stress, and that can be very harmful for cells, harmful for DNA, leading to aging. So what they did is these researchers looked at hydrogen, whether it was hydrogen water or hydrogen that you inhale or injections of hydrogen in saline, to see if it had any effect on oxidative stress. And it looks like all forms of molecular hydrogen did lower the markers of oxidative stress throughout the tissues. Now, inhalation was the best way. If you're going to do that, that's going to be through a doctor's office, but the others worked in reducing most markers of oxidative stress. The one that's easiest is hydrogen water. Now, there's two ways you can do that. You can get a machine that makes hydrogen water, or you can buy online these pills that you drop in it and it creates hydrogen water. Either way, it's pretty expensive, but I've been looking into it. There's a site, and I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, that hydrogenstudies.net or something like that, they're not selling anything, there's no bias, but it presents all the different research studies for molecular hydrogen for treating all kinds of problems, including things like osteoarthritis and other musculoskeletal conditions, and it is very interesting. So it is something I'm going to continue to play around with before I go all in and buy one of these big machines that cost like $3,000. I'm still playing around with it. All right. I don't know necessarily, this is one of the studies that you say, oh, of course that's true, but you always wonder kind of how they do it. Well, there was a new study that came out just last week in Current Biology. I think these were Harvard researchers. And they basically figured out that Americans today do about 30 minutes less physical activity than we did 200 years ago. Now, that's not based on journaling or meticulous doctor's records or anything like that. What they did is that they basically looked at metabolic rates, falling body temperatures in the United States. I guess our average body temperature is gradually going down, and used it to calculate physical activity along the spectrum. And compared to 1820, our metabolic rate has declined about 6%. So that translates 27 minutes per day of less moderate to vigorous physical activity. Why is that? Well, it's got to be technology, right? We have the car, so we don't have to walk everywhere. We have computers, so we can do all our work that way instead of doing manual physical labor. We've basically used technology to get rid of lots of our physical activity, and that is probably not necessarily a good thing. One of these studies that's not surprising, but it is interesting that they can find a way to prove it. Speaking of exercise has all kinds of good benefits, but a new study out of the University of Southern California shows that exercise might help prevent breast cancer. That's right. Over 1,000 women studied that half of them had been diagnosed just recently with breast cancer, half didn't, and then they looked at all sorts of factors: age, race, all sorts of other demographic factors, and exercise levels. And what they found, the women who basically had the most exercise from when they started menstruating to a year before they were diagnosed with breast cancer, they were significantly lower risk for developing breast cancer. Basically, women, young girls, teenagers, need to make exercise part of their daily healthy lifestyle because, in addition to all the other factors, mental health benefits, all sorts of physical health benefits, that it also may lower your risk of cancer. The National Cancer Institute says that if you do a lot of physical activity after menopause, that also lowers your risk of breast cancer. So exercise, there's a group, and I can't think of it off the top of my head, but there is a sports medicine group, I think, that their slogan at least was, if it's not now, exercise is medicine. And as far as treatments that make you better, there are not many better than going for a run, lifting weights, walking, rowing, paddleboarding, any of it. So think about it. If you exercise a lot, do a lot of weightlifting, and have muscle injuries or delayed onset muscle soreness, there's a supplement that may help with that, and that supplement is curcumin. Now, curcumin is the active ingredient in turmeric. People love turmeric. It's an anti-inflammatory. It's all this. Curcumin's what actually does the work as far as turmeric goes. It can be consumed as a supplement rather than turmeric powder that you put in your food. But new study shows it has some interesting exercise benefits. Journal Oxidative Medicine and Cellular Longevity. Curcumin supplementation, decrease in levels of inflammatory markers after exercise, lower markers of muscle damage, and better physical performance during exercise. This was based on a number of studies that they put together into a systematic review. Reduced inflammation, reduced muscle pain from exercise, reduced muscle pain from sports, improved muscle recovery, and reduced fatigue. Now, you would have to say, because the study doses here were 0.18 grams to 0.4 grams. I don't know how much curcumin is just in a little bit of turmeric that you put on your food, but I doubt it's that much. So this is suggesting potentially a curcumin supplement might be beneficial. All right. I love discussion. I love studies about longevity, ways to live longer. And again, it's not just about longevity, it's about health span. Feeling great, being physically active as long as you can. Well, there is a new study out it was out of the University of Edinburgh that looked at, it's out of Karolinska Institute, Swedish study, that looked at a particular sport and longevity. And they were looking at golfers. They looked at 300,000 golfers and tried to figure out what its effect on lifespan was. And what they found is that playing golf, I'm just going to read this because I'm skeptical to say the least. Playing golf cut your risk of death 40%. That's 5 extra years of your life expectancy. Now, they said it's because it involves a lot of walking. If you walk, and again, the key is if, because if you see the golf courses here in Charleston, not everybody, 80% of them are using golf carts. But if you walk, golfers walk roughly 8 miles per round. And walking, obviously good. Lower risks of cardiovascular disease, cancer, diabetes, all sorts of things. Now, interestingly, in this study, golf was the second best for longevity. Tennis was number 1. But they say they concluded golfers live longer. They enjoy improvements in cholesterol, body composition, wellness, self-esteem, and self-worth. All right, here's my thing. If you love golf, I'm all for it. I absolutely agree that there's probably a ton of mental health benefits. Getting out in nature and sunlight, all the vitamin D. And I question how much of the benefit of golf is not the walking, but it's being outdoors, sunlight, that kind of thing. Would you get that same benefit with all golfers, ones that had to use carts or that do use carts? I suspect those numbers would drop a little bit. But generally, I feel like if golf is something that you could enjoy, it's good for your mental health, and especially if you can walk, it's good for your physical health. I'm all for it. I'm just a little skeptical that at least the average recreational golfer here using a golf cart is not going to see that 5 years of life expectancy. So the next time you go play golf, just carry your bag or get one of those little pull carts and walk the course. I think that will be much, much better for you. And last, I talked about cheese earlier and being one of my favorite foods. My sort of guilty pleasure food, truly a guilty pleasure, is peanut butter. Love peanut butter. I love peanut butter pie. When I was a kid, I used to love peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, peanut butter and banana sandwiches. That was the best. Just love peanut butter. Now I'm healthy, try to be as healthy as I can, so I don't eat peanut butter that often. And when I do, it is just organic peanuts with nothing else in it. Literally, the label just says organic peanuts. There's no sugar. This isn't Peter Pan or Jif or Skippy that are just full of sugar. Just organic peanuts. And I've been known to finish an entire jar in one serving. I'm not going to say that is all that uncommon. I don't know every time by any stretch of the imagination, but I do love peanut butter. Well, it's a good thing. There's a new study. I talked about this on the TV. People loved it. I got a lot of comments about, so I can eat peanut butter now, huh? Study out of the University of Barcelona tested young adults between the ages of 18 and 33 and looked at peanuts, peanut butter, and a third group that ate a control butter. And for 6 months, how you sign up thinking, oh sweet, I'm gonna get to eat peanut butter for 6 months and get paid for it, and then you're in the control group eating a control butter. What a letdown that would be. But 3 different groups: peanuts, skin roasted peanuts, peanut butter, and a control butter, tested their memory function, tested mental health, anxiety, depression. What they found is that both the peanuts and the peanut butter group had improvements in immediate memory recall. So I don't know how they tested it necessarily, but it was, maybe you have to remember 5 words and then answer it right away, but basically your memory right then and there. Both peanuts and peanut butter had that. But only the peanut butter group had an improvement in their overall memory function in all the tests. And so peanut butter may be good for learning, may be good for memory. Big fan. Now, interestingly, only the peanut group, skin roasted peanuts, saw a reduction in anxiety. The control group, not so much of any improvement. Now, what it was, the researchers found or believe, is that it was the polyphenols. We're back to that again with the blueberries. Polyphenols, major factor as far as peanuts and peanut butter goes, as far as lowering the anxiety levels and improving memory function. Now, it doesn't have to be peanut butter. It can be peanuts, dark chocolate, apples, olive oil, red wine, all thought to be high in polyphenols. So, if you eat peanut butter, I'm all for it. Try to get one that doesn't have all sorts of sugar in it. Look at the label. It should only say organic peanuts. And then try not to do what I do, which is to eat the whole jar. Probably not such a good thing. All right, very much appreciated it. This is the problem with doing 15 studies, is that you tend to go long. I will be here tomorrow, back by popular demand. I'm going to do another Ask Dr. Geier Live as part of Better Than Ever Live, 12 p.m. Eastern Time, which should be 9 a.m. Pacific time, or wherever you are. It'll be at noon our time. And I would love to answer any questions about health, wellness. If you've got a bone or joint injury, let me know that as well. Robert, I did look into the statins and testosterone. It's interesting, at least for men, it's sort of all over the map. Some studies show that statins do not lower testosterone. Some show that they do, but then people argue that that's actually the point. Statins lower cholesterol, but you need cholesterol to make steroid hormones like testosterone, so that may be sort of a natural sort of a byproduct of it. Doesn't seem to be as big of a deal clinically, though. So for what it's worth. But that would explain why it could drop your testosterone level, is that it's cutting your cholesterol, and then that cholesterol would normally be needed by the steroid pathways to create testosterone and other hormones. Very much appreciated you being here. If you can join us tomorrow at noon, that will not be recorded as a podcast. That's just going to be live on YouTube, youtube.com/Dr. David Geier. Ring the bell to be notified when we're online. Facebook.com/Dr. David Geier, and on LinkedIn. Thank you very much. and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. And if not tomorrow, I'll see you next week. Have a great weekend or great night. I will talk